Liquid no longer, resin reduced to rubbery ruin, filament flow fails, forming faint and foggy features, and the Centauri controversy, Elegoo cutting corners on code compliance. All this and more, PrintFix Friday, episode 210. Let's get into it. Starting off with the forbidden fondue of the Sunlu, no, Sun-goo. They got some resin via the Jake 3D resin tracker, showing that the Sunlu glow-in-the-dark orange was $10 a bottle. It's $10 a bottle. I mean, I would probably take that for glow-in-the-dark orange. That sounds kind of cool. This is what they got with 3 bottles made in October of 2024. Expiration of October 26. It's the forbidden fondue. Unfortunately, this resin has already started to kick in some way, whether the bottle had some sort of light leakage that got through it, or just over time it started to kind of turn into that forbidden jello. What we should consistently remind people is that resin is toxic, and unless it is fully and perfectly cured, it is a contact allergen. It is hazardous to water as well as animals that live in the water, and the fumes that come off of it, the VOCs, can also be something that you are allergic to, and especially birds can be hypersensitive to, so please be careful with resin. There is, unfortunately, nothing you can really do about this. Once you've got the goo, you can't really ungooify the goo. But Amazon's taking care of them, completely replacing it, so this begs the question. I know exactly what I would do. I would pour this into like silicone brick mold or something and let it cure in the sun for a few days and turn it into a big glow-in-the-dark brick that I randomly replace on the walkway up to my house, because that would be funny. But what would you do with a bunch of useless 3D printer resin? There is nothing you can really do with it. I wouldn't even trust it for things like smoothing out filament printed parts, using it as gap filler material. It's not worth it when it has already started to, I guess, congeal. But this can happen when resin does go bad. Yes, the most common thing with this is when there is some light leak into the bottle of resin, but this can happen when the chemicals just start to react with each other for no good reason. But see, the top commenter says that this is okay. Now, personally, I would never use this, and I've never used glow-in-the-dark resin before, but apparently the glow-in-the-dark pigment, which is normally strontium aluminate, apparently makes it quite viscous, and the way to deal with this is to mix in a little bit of clear resin and to warm it up significantly. And yeah, you know what? Okay, that does kind of make sense, but without their advice, I would have done the exact same thing this person did. So what would you have done if your resin looked like squeezy cheese? I know me, I would have thought that there was something wrong with it because none of my other resins, including the thicker resins like Soraya Tex Blue, are nowhere near as chunky as this. And traditionally when things get chunky, you throw them out.
And then there's Chunky. He's dead.
And hey, my name is Grant. This is 3D Musketeers and PrintFix Friday, where we help you get your printers back to printing with purpose. And whether it is the random weird gooey blob of Sunlu resin, or it happens to be something more specific about your machines, you can reach out to us with any issues whatsoever. Make a video on YouTube, tag us in that description so we can see the video and feature it in upcoming episodes. Or you can always reach out to us on the social medias. We'll be able to help you one-on-one. But if you're looking for more directed one-on-one support from a community of makers that most of them actually own their own business in this industry, you can join our Discord at the $10 tier and higher. Links, of course, are in that description down below. Hey, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe while you're down there. Moving on from the forbidden easy cheese over to buddy of the channel, Mihai Designs here, who's got, well, you can see a bit of a sneak peek. There are some interesting issues with his Bambu X1 Carbon. Let's take a watch.
I don't know what's happening here.
Oh, I
I
do.
don't even know if I should be angry or not. I seem to have activated a secret feature. It still
Yes,
looks
it's the
fine.
Spider-Man.
Do we have a partial clog?
Yes.
I'm not even mad. It's the first time I see something like this.
This is a very common issue when you have a partial clog, especially with fiber-filled filaments. The fibers inside of the filament themselves can actually clog part of the pathway of the nozzle, and until you do a cold pull or some other method of removing the filament, you're not really going to be able to print. Let's see what happens here. Squishy.
Definitely a clog, it cannot extrude.
I like this.
Looks like I pushed it through.
Nice.
Let's put this back. I'm testing with some nylon. Works. Still partially clogged,
Yep.
I think, because it pushes to the side.
That is great advice. If the filament pushes out to the side and not straight, then you likely still have a partial clog, and it's time to look at doing something other than the forbidden sounding rod. Now, to be clear, if you do not have a hardened steel nozzle, or better, do not do this. Even on a hardened steel nozzle, you're risking that acupuncture needle, which is likely much harder than your hardened steel nozzle, creating damage. It is absolutely harder than a brass nozzle or a stainless steel nozzle, so be careful with those. Don't just go shoving the thing in there. You gotta ask permission first. Consent is key.
Okay, I'm gonna do a cold pull, waiting for some cooldown. Wow, it's a metal fragment. Macro lens. Nice. No wonder it was clogged.
Yeah, that's the definition of there's your problem. So here's the funny thing with fiber-filled filaments like we saw here. Well, yeah, the fiber can cause the clog. The fibers are, as you might guess, abrasive, and that abrasion can abrade bits of metal to fall into the hot end assembly. Now, those of you that have known my history with my Bambu X1 Carbon know that we actually ended up using carbon fiber filament to smooth out the AMS path and have it run better. But just recently, I finally replaced all those AMS tubes with over 2,000 print hours on them, and suffice to say, these were on borrowed time. You can have bits of metal go down into the hot end. So if you are going to be using a fiber-filled filament inside of an AMS or AMS style unit, be aware that that filament path is very long and provides a lot of opportunity for little bits of metal to get worn away. Also note that it is going to damage your Bowden tubes and your PTFE tubes. It is going to damage the feed gears on pretty much everything that isn't hardened, and has a tendency to take a round hole and turn it into an oval in a very short period of time. Now, we've made quite a few upgrades to our Bambu X1 Carbon ever since those videos, and it has been running quite a bit better ever since. And if you guys do want to see a video showing not only the mods that we have made, mods that we would obviously recommend to you, but looking at all the other mods that are available from companies like Big Tree Tech and BQ, let us know down in those comments. But if you are going to run fiber-filled materials, please make sure to look at least a 0.6mm nozzle. Do not use high-flow nozzles. They're pretty much asking to get at least one of the multi-passageways clogged. And in this case, Mihai was able to get this out, which is awesome, because otherwise you're kind of stuck with a bunch of crap in your hot end that's very difficult to get out. And it's why we recommend to keep some raw nylon on hand. The problem is nylon absorbs moisture faster than silica gel in Florida, so you do have to keep it in a vacuum sealed bag, or at least minimally dry it before you intend to use it to actually print. But to do cold pulls with, heck, it's totally fine to use damp nylon for that. It doesn't matter.
Works. We fixed it.
And as you can see, it worked perfectly fine in the end. And that's really all that we're going for. Good job, Mihai. That is a great I've got a problem. It looks interesting. It's the hero's journey, as it was. And, well, the 1.1 million thumbs up speak for themselves. Good work, good video. I'm glad it's getting the exposure that it deserves. And before you think all we do is cover Bambu fails, because I know that's what you're saying, Grant, you always have a Bambu fail every week. Well, guess what? This is a Prusa fail, so delete the comment, the mean one. You can write a nice one, though. That's fine. We got a Prusa Mini here, which they've had since July. A decent printer, but is difficult price-wise right now. They're still about $400, and, well, the Mini is kind of like the XL. It hasn't had much of an update in quite some time. They've had some issues, but now it's working pretty well. But they've noticed the molten plastic on the back of the printer, and should they stop? Well, yes, you should.
Stop it. Get some help.
But what's actually occurring here is that the connectors to the heat bed, one of them is loose or installed incorrectly. I know this because I've had this happen myself. For those that don't know, prior to us, becoming content creators and having Prusa send a machine here and there, we always built our machines as kits. All the Mark IIIs that we have, all the Minis that we have, even the XL, those are kits, or as much of a kit as they can be, because we like to add some custom parts to them, color code them so we know what machine is what, and just generally because then we have a control over how the machine is built. Well, I apparently screwed one of those up and had a loose bed connector, which did the exact thing that we see here and melted the plastic above it. Now, the nice thing is it just gets hot. I've never seen one actually catch fire, but it just gets warm. So the plastic melting is the, hey, you might want to check that. And before you say, but Grant, that's what the A1 Mini did. No, there's no scorch marks for this. And while I technically can't see under it, I know what mine looked like. There were no scorch marks. I just put everything back together the right way, and it worked perfectly fine. It's not that I needed any new parts. I just reprinted the one part that was melted, but technically, I didn't need to. And we can see it did get a little bit toasty here. The connector is definitely going to need to be replaced. I would not reuse that. You can actually see how the copper pad has discolored from all of the heat associated with this issue. And while yes, technically they have it connected correctly, I would not do it this way personally, because you're really just relying on the bolt itself to transfer the power, and well, that's a bit of an issue. Now, what likely happened here is that this bolt and nylock lock nut was not tightened well enough. And because of that, that connector got a little bit loose and created a fair bit of resistance, creating the issue that we see here. The heat bed appears to be fine to me. I would still run it. I've got heat beds that look way worse than I got heat beds where you can see the copper traces on them, which we do cover with clear nail polish. It's totally fine. It's been working for me for years. Take that advice at your own risk. I'm not responsible if you do dumb things.
There's a little gray area in there, and that's where you operate.
But the cool thing with the Mini being one of the later open source machines that Prusa produced, you can get some decent cable support systems that you can easily print out that make this issue considerably less of a real world problem. And yeah, just gonna go ahead and replace that whole cable. I might even say that this could have been a fire hazard, but it's not the company's fault. It's the user's fault for assembling it. It very clearly got way too hot and melted through. It would have to hit all the wrong things. Thankfully, it's a very easy thing to fix. It's just new wires. You're good to go. The print beds normally survive this without a problem whatsoever. Prusa users out there, have you done this? I feel like it's one of those rites of passage with Prusa printers where you accidentally do this and have to fix it. Another note, just as more of a personal thing, the socks for an E3D V6 fit the Mini perfectly fine. Put a sock on it. Last but not least, the Elegoo Centauri Carbon since August 7th of 2025 is not in GPL compliance because it is based on Klipper and they have not released the source code. Now, here's the thing with open source. You might say, Grant, I don't care about open source. I just want a cheap printer that works. Fine. I don't disagree with you. There's perfectly good reasons to say, I just want something that works. We're not going to blame you for that. What I am going to blame is that when someone calls Elegoo on it and says, I want to get your source code because you've utilized Klipper, you've publicly utilized Klipper, I'm calling the open source license, and Elegoo tells them to kick rocks, that's a bit of a problem. As we've seen in this industry, it is very common for companies to just abuse open source licenses, and generally speaking, they get away with it. I'm not a huge fan of this. We've talked about this on the podcast before. We'll card to the latest open source episode. By the way, if you do enjoy the podcast and you want something that's a little bit more sweet and condensed, you know, like Jacob, because he's much smaller and condensed than I am, you can check out the new Making Awesome YouTube channel, which we will link to. It'll be in the pinned comment. We are putting out edited episodes of the podcast, clips of the podcast as well. So if you're looking for a more, let's go with refined experience, you can go check that out. We're starting back at episode 230, and we're eventually going to be catching up with the live show that happens pretty much every Sunday at noon Eastern. If you do want to come hang out with myself, Jacob, and generally at least 150 other awesome people in the chat, where we talk about different subjects in the industry, one of them being open source. And I always feel like the old man yelling at the cloud about open source, because the average consumer generally doesn't care. They don't understand open source, it doesn't matter to them, and they just want something that works. But as someone who is only here because of open source, and to be clear, the vast majority of you are only here because of open source and the advancements that were made on top of open source since it came out. Things like Klipper, Marlin, RepRap firmware, and others, they power this industry and enable manufacturers like Elegoo to produce machines at a surprisingly affordable level, with the Centauri Carbon coming in at $300 US for a 256 cube. We have a thing in the Discord about, coining something the poverty this and this. The Centauri Carbon is absolutely a poverty P1S from Bambu, and with the new Panda Breath, it's a name, from Big Tree Tech, which I am so looking forward to getting my hands on. I want more enclosed machines with chamber heaters because they would be so much more useful for us as a business. You could turn that into an X1E effectively. There's a lot of value in a machine like that, especially when you can utilize the open source licenses to build your own custom firmware. There is an entire group that is looking to open the Centauri Carbon, which the name might suggest would be Open Centauri. You can check out their Discord. We'll link to it in that description if you do want to join it, kind of see where they're at. But to give you guys an idea, they're the ones that found it. We have the entire technical evidence here as well. The big issue that we have is that if you don't follow open source, then there's no reason for the companies that build open source to continue to publish it. We can see that this website has gone as far as to even name some of the good actors here, including Prusa Research, Lulzbot, Fame 3D, Creality, Ultimaker, BCN 3D, Ratrig Silval, and Snapmaker, because they are following the rules. We need more companies to follow the rules when it comes to open source, and the ones that don't to be called out for it. And as we can see from individuals in the community here, from people like Lamarck and Anna DevMiner saying, everyone, including Elegoo, is required to stick to licensing rules. It's clearly Klipper under the hood, so it has to be made available. Taking open source projects, Klipper, and calling them your own is super scummy. I absolutely agree, and no company should ever do that, especially when they publicly say it's built on an open source platform and then just not follow the rules. Having the open source Klipper code for the Centauri and Centauri Carbon would vastly improve its ability to be integrated into other systems that already exist. Things like the Panda Touch that's designed for, like the P1S, could easily work with something like the Centauri Carbon in theory if you could have access to its source code. Putting it onto systems like Home Assistant, all that would also be easier if you could run regular mainline Klipper. But it also enables, if there is a huge update to Klipper, for a custom build of the firmware to be released by community members that implements all of this, effectively absolving Elegoo of ever needing to do this in the first place. This is actually where open source benefits the companies more than anything else. The community will do a lot of this work for you. All you have to do is just adopt it into your main tree and push it as a real release. We can see Brando753 says, GPL compliance is simple. If you use GPL code, you must provide the modified source on request. If you cannot, you must not use GPL code. Providing binary blobs is not compliance. Next step, document refusals and contact the SFC to support enforcement. At this point, if Elegoo doesn't comply, there's only a few ways left for the community to continue to go after them, and most of those involve expensive lawyers. And we can see that multiple community members have reached out to Elegoo and have gotten the identical canned response. Reading, currently we have submitted the relevant information to our research and development team and are awaiting their response. However, we regret to inform you that there has been a delay in the process, which has contributed to the extended time frame. We sincerely apologize for any inconvenience this delay may have caused you. It's not that difficult. Even I know how to upload things to a GitHub repo, and I should not be using GitHub, to be clear. Uncle Jesse has even talked publicly about it, saying that he has reached out to his contacts at Elegoo. As a lot of you know, he works very closely with Elegoo and is often one of their largest content creators that show off their machines. And he does a great job doing it. I love his content, and I hope to see him next week at 3D Printopia, where we hope to see you as well. We will be there at 3D Printopia the last year in Bel Air, Maryland. So if you are going to be there, come up, say hey. We might have some maker chips on us. Just saying, if you want to get some, and it's the only way to get them, is to come say hey to us. So come find us when we're not filming. We're always happy to have a chat as well. But what do you guys think about this? Do you care about open source? Is this that big of a deal to you? Or do you just not care? As long as your machine works, you're not really concerned about how the rest of it is handled. Love to know your thoughts. Me personally, I believe that open source is seeing less and less value in the community as 3D printing becomes more of a commodity item than anything else, because the average consumer just wants it to work. But I believe for this industry to continue down the path that it is going, and hopefully that is a good path, mind you, open source has to be enforced. And if it's not, we quickly lose what matters to us, which is, well, the stepping stones that brought us to where we are. The likes of amazing individuals like Adrian Boyer, who are directly responsible for a lot of the technology that we see here today and have started with those building blocks that make 3D printers as awesome as they are now. So me personally, I don't like it, and it's why we're putting it in this episode. So from myself and the entire crew of 3D Musketeers, Elegoo, we are officially making this request that you do publish your full source code for Klipper. We will be holding you accountable, and we will be making certain that if you do not do it, we continue to remind the community that there are these violations in process. Mind you, I have a lot of Elegoo machines. I like their printers. I like Elegoo as a company. I think they make decent equipment for the money, especially for the money. But that doesn't make everything else that's going on here okay. While it has been going on for over a month, it is not too late. Elegoo can still fix this problem, and we can move forward. And certainly if Elegoo continues to remain silent on this and generally beats around the bush as it was, the Open Centauri group is likely just going to crack this open anyways, allow users to load in their own mainline Klipper versions, and say, hey, you know what? Screw them. If we can't work with them, we'll work against them, and we'll work around them. We've seen this happen before, and often that does light a fire. So, Elegoo, we want to see some things here. You guys have always been good to this community. You've generally held open source very highly. It's time to continue that pledge. We greatly appreciate it. Just like we greatly appreciate the names listed right next to me at the $5 tier and higher. Remember, if you want to get your name listed in lights, sure. You could do so by joining at the links down below. I'd love to know your guys' thoughts all about this Centauri Carbon, open source, and all of that. I don't know. I feel like we could do an entire podcast on it, but I think at some point it's also kind of beating a dead horse. I don't know. Trying to ride a fine line there, obviously. That is all we have for you all today. Don't forget to leave a like and get subscribed, but stay safe out there. Don't forget to call your loved ones, and as always, keep making awesome. Have a good one. But hey, my name is Grant. This is 3D Musketeers. And hey, my name is Grant.